Hey y'all, it's Amber
and Heather.
and welcome to Tool Talk. We are here today with a really great topic, and that is
menopause.
oh yes, we are going to begin a series here, so you'll definitely want to tune in to hear all of what we have to share with you, especially if you are a female and definitely someone who is probably over 30, because we will talk today about perimenopause, and then we'll go into some other information in our different episodes in this series. So Heather actually came up with this idea for us to talk about this. And Heather, why do you think we need to do multiple episodes on menopause?
Well, Amber, we are unprepared. I know I was unprepared. The elder women in my life did me no favors by not discussing menopause with me at any point during their life. And I feel very ill prepared. I feel like I've been blindsided. I've been hit upside the head, and I'm just going around in circles trying to figure out which way is up. And I just think it's ridiculous because mostly every woman goes through this.
Yes.
Why aren't we talking about it?
Yeah, it's a huge phase of our life. And there are a lot of changes that happen, which we will discuss those, that if you don't know, if you're not prepared that they're coming, you said you were blindsided. It really does feel like that. And sometimes you feel like you're crazy. Sometimes you feel like there's no answer. You don't understand what's happening, because once you get to the point that you're going into perimenopause, I feel like I know I kind of had a grip on who I was and how my life was, how my workout plan was and my nutrition plan was. And all of that just got smacked up against the wall and thrown out the window. Boom. So I feel it's very important. And it is being talked about way more now, especially with social media. We have a lot of influencers who are putting some great information out there, and I've learned from some of them, and it's sparked me to do a little research and to read into some of the studies when I see that information. And it also helped me to change my decision on how I was going to handle menopause, which I'll discuss in a later episode.
Yes, because you're further along through the process of the change, as like my aunt likes to call it, than I am. So it is super important to realize that you do have the ability to help yourself once you figure out what it is that's going on.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really important aspects of what you need to do or implement into your life, and sometimes change, to make sure that you are doing everything that's right to help you be successful during perimenopause and through into menopause. So I'll just start with perimenopause, and that is the onset, and it can last up to 10 years before you go through full menopause. And if you don't know the difference, so perimenopause is that time period before. Menopause is actually just one day in your life. So when a female goes through a full year without bleeding, without having a menstrual cycle, that is her menopause day. And from that moment on, she is postmenopause. So I am postmenopausal.
Congratulations.
Yeah, woo! I feel like I need to get a trophy. No, I'm just kidding. Yes. And Heather is perimenopausal, but I'll share a little bit about when I discovered and realized that this was happening to me. I actually was like, I think I'm perimenopausal. And I didn't really have anybody to talk to much about it. So I go to the doctor and I'm asking him, and he checks me and he just tells me that he doesn't think I'm there yet. That everything
keyword he
yeah that he thought that I wasn't there yet, and that some parts of my body looked fine. Okay, that's just ridiculous. I won't get into that. But then I'm like, well, why am I having these really erratic cycles with bleeding? And he said, I think that you have fibroids. Okay, well, I don't know. He's the doctor, so he did try to check me for fibroids. That was a whole disaster. He could not get into my cervix that day. Who knows? I know, what happens, but it didn't happen that day, so he wasn't 100% sure. So then I left the office. I really don't know what's going on still. The one thing he did say to me was that many times women follow very closely to what their mothers did. So maybe I should have a conversation with my mom. So I asked my mom, I'm like, Mom, how old were you when you went through menopause? And she goes, I don't know. So she had no recollection.
No.
She didn't remember. She seemed to think that hers wasn't really that bad. And so here I am. I'm like, I think this is what's happening, but no, I have nobody to help me. So at that point, I just was like, ugh. Now, I will say this. My doctor did talk to me about having, one, a hysterectomy, which I was like, I don't really want to have surgery if I don't have to have it. And then two, he did mention to me about medications. And I said, listen, I'm just going to ride this out, which I will tell you later how
Famous last words.
I decided not to ride this out and why, but we'll talk about that later. So that was my experience with thinking, I think this is where I am, but nobody was, my medical professional was not helping me really discover if I was. I also have to say, not to put all the blame on him, I didn't know the correct questions to ask. I know now. I know what I should have done. I know what I should have asked. And I, at that point, probably, if I wasn't able to talk to him like I felt like, I probably needed to seek out somebody else.
But most women are probably in that same scenario. We don't know what to ask, especially if we haven't had a conversation with any other females in our life about it. We have no idea what's happening. We just know we're falling apart and we don't know why. So I think the education process is super important, but it's been non-existent.
Yeah. And also, everybody experiences it quite differently. So that's the other thing. You might ask your friend and they're like, that doesn't sound anything like what happened to me. But that doesn't mean that you're not perimenopausal.
Right. I've always said, when you're young and you're pregnant, you have the What to Expect When You're Expecting book, and you have the What to Expect After the First Year book. Man, what happened to the What to Expect When You Hit Your 40s through 50s book? Like, where is that preparation for us?
Yeah. And hopefully the tides are turning now and more people are coming out to talk about this. I think more doctors are becoming interested in women and helping them through this time period.
Yes, because I think we found a voice like we do here on social media, where we have a community, whereas before we really didn't have much of a community to seek wisdom from other women.
Right, exactly. So I have some symptoms that I'm happy to share, but Heather, I feel like because you are currently in this whole process, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and what you're experiencing right now?
Yes. So it's very interesting. Once you research the symptoms, you can start thinking back to where, oh, hey, that was happening like 3 years ago. I will turn 52 on the 1st of December. So I have, and the symptoms that I'm fixing to list, I have started feeling those probably 6 or 7 years without really realizing there was a correlation to hormone levels. You just know something's off, so you try to fix your diet, or I hear so many women say, well, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And then they instantly just have to feel like they have to suffer through it. So these are kind of just some of the things that I have experienced, and it's quite a long list. Eye twitching. My left eye has twitched probably for the last year. Rage, followed by or closely related to uncontrollable bouts of crying. It's funny because women were hormonal anyway, especially monthly. So we all can relate to having the once a month where we watch the Publix commercials and we just cry, or you see something on TV and you can't stop crying kind of thing. Well, now it's on overload. Hot flashes. Of course, that's probably the one main symptoms that most people relate to menopause is having hot flashes. But then you can also have freezing, like bouts of absolute chills that you can't get rid of. And of course, the irregular, and I put angry periods, so they change dramatically after, if you've been having like regular cycles, and then once you hit, it can like, full on hatred. All right. And then, of course, the muffin tops that we talk about, or the fupas, which is the fat, right? Yeah, they call them
fat upper private area.
Yes, upper pubic area, the fat upper. So now they coined it to a cutesy little name. So now we have, so if you got the little pooch down below or the pooch up above your waist, those are also symptoms of menopause. Sleep deprivation, which can also lead to exhaustion, your cortisol levels through the roof, random sharp pains.
Yes.
Right? So you could just be having a normal day, and then all of a sudden something just really hurts, and you're like, oh my gosh, did I sprain this? Did I, no, it will go away. Joint pain, itchy ears. That's also having the dry ear inside. Hair loss, low libido. That is just to name a few. And that's a lot of a few.
Yeah.
But and it's funny now. So anytime something goes wrong or crazy with my body, or my mind, I just say, okay, that's perimenopause. So the list gets longer and longer.
Yeah. And so looking back, of course, I didn't realize this is what was happening.
Right.
Okay. So now I'm looking back, hindsight is 2020, and now I understand. But I think the first change for me was my sleep. So I've always been a really good sleeper. In fact, when I got married, my husband was like, Amber, your head hits the pillow and you're like out. He said, just like dead to the world immediately. And I was, and I always slept pretty well through the night. I've always gotten up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, but I would sleep. And of course, for the past, 20 years, I've been getting up at 4 or 4:30 in the morning. So that was just kind of normal for me to get up that early. But I started this whole thing where I would wake up about 2 hours or an hour before my alarm, and my mind would just be like, blah, 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 blah. All of these thoughts, like you have so much to do, and blah, 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 and did you call this person, and did you text them, did you schedule them, did you send the email out to the email list, like all of these things. Now, at the time, I attributed it to my business because I was growing the training tool. I had a team that was started, like you came on. Yes. And I just thought that this was the mind of a business owner. I did not realize. And so I struggled with my sleep for a long time there. And finally somebody said to me, Amber, that's anxiety. I didn't feel that anxious in my body. It was just my mind. So for me, that's how the anxiety started. So anxiety and depression shows up for many women during this time. And I'll just, one of the things that I don't struggle with is mental health. I don't have any issues with anxiety or depression or anything like that. I got other issues though, so don't worry. And, but that was really like, oh, okay. Then I have endometriosis. I've always had pain related to my period and things like that. And so I have been on and off birth control throughout my life to try to control that. And then all of a sudden, and I remember the day it happened, I was like, this is probably the day that my perimenopause started. I was shopping with my mom, actually. My parents actually happened to be in Ocala visiting, and we were in like Ross or TJ Maxx, and I started bleeding so badly. I'd never bled like that before, and I was like, oh my gosh, I am gonna have to
dying
buy
right
pants.
here.
Yes, it was terrible. And then that began the whole series of this really heavy bleeding, a lot of clotting. So that was another symptom for me. Now again, I'm relating this to my endometriosis.
Sure.
I have no idea. Then the things that started to accumulate over time, like I already had problems with painful sex. Now it was getting worse. And I started having more frequent UTIs, which I've always had to be really careful in my life. I'm very susceptible to those, but this was happening all the time. It was ridiculous. And I'm like, come on, man, I even know what to do, and I'm still getting them. And then when I went to the doctor and again asked about being perimenopausal, are you having hot flashes or night sweats? Those were the
Those are the
two
two
things they asked
Yep.
me about, and I was not. I said, sometimes I feel kind of warm, and I've always been a cold person, but it wasn't a hot flash. Well, then I started to realize my hot flashes aren't necessarily like other people. I feel warm, but I don't like full on sweat.
Yeah.
And then it got to the point where I just felt like I wanted to rip my clothes off. Like I just needed to be naked because I was so hot and you just couldn't get cool. So I did start getting the hot flashes. I never really had the night sweats, but I would wake up hot.
Yes.
I just wouldn't be wet and sweaty. And then like you get cold, and we had this conversation about how you need to stick your foot out. Like for some reason, it's like just get my foot out, right? And then you get cold and you bring it back in. And then I did not realize this was happening. It happened slowly over time. And now that I'm back readjusted, I realize how bad it was. But it was like when people talk about no libido, I talk about it feeling like you just feel dead inside,
empty.
like you don't care about it anymore, which is very strange if you're somebody who is in a relationship where you love the person and are attracted to them, but you don't understand what's happening. It's like, what's going on here?
Yes.
So that definitely happened to me. And then the weight gain. So around the time that I was getting hotter, and not in a good way, happened, then the belly showed up. So I've always worked out for a super long time. I've been very consistent with my workouts, and I eat fairly healthy. I'm not 100%, but it was like I was gaining weight and the belly was just fatter and I could not get rid of it. Like all of the things that worked in the past didn't work anymore, which we need to do a whole episode on that. So I'll be glad to address that. We'll just do a whole belly fat episode because there's too much to talk about in just this one. So that is what was happening to me. And then of course I was young. All of this, when the crazy period started where I would not bleed for 3 months and then I would bleed for a full month, I was about 45, 46. Mm-hmm. So to the medical community, I'm young,
like 52 or
right?
something. Yes.
Because 51 is the average age. But that's for you to go through menopause. You could be having symptoms 8 to 10 years prior to that. So everybody's like, oh, you're too young for that. You're too young for that. No, ma'am, I was not too young for that. So at 47, I was full menopausal. So just if anybody out there is younger and you're experiencing some of these things that I'm talking about. Now, I'm not saying that it's definitely perimenopause. That's something you need to decide, and you need to find a good medical professional to help you with.
Yes, and that's it. You got to find somebody who is willing to talk to you and willing to listen to what you have to say, because you're the only one that knows your body. They can tell you all of the medical recommendations and the scientific what's this and what's that, but you are ultimately the only one that knows your body and the changes that you're going through. So it's super important just to be able to talk to a medical profession or just somebody about that to kind of help you in the right direction, because this is something that we should not suffer through alone. No. I'm just so passionate about this now, of course, because I'm in the middle of it. And, there's just no reason that you should have to go through this without getting some answers or feeling like you're in control, because this is one part of your life that you feel the most out of control.
Yeah.
And, I've had babies and I've, raised children, and that is very crazy too, because, typically you're younger, and now that I'm older, and like Amber said, you feel a little bit more in control of your life. And then all of a sudden, boom, here we are again, spiraling, out in the middle of nowhere in a little circle. So it's important for you to want to find your voice and be heard and be taken seriously. And I always say this, this is like, I believe this is probably what a lot of the Salem witch trials were based on, because they thought these ladies were just nuts, and it's just not true. This has been going on since the beginning of time. So we're here to help fix it, hopefully.
Yeah, I know. And give you just some information and maybe some direction and how to go, because we weren't given that direction at all. And that's one of the reasons why Heather and I do what we do. We want to help people. And certainly as females, we definitely feel strongly about helping females feel their best, look their best and be strong.
Yes.
And confident. So we want that for you. But this is just the intro. So definitely make sure you tune in, and we'll be back with more episodes on menopause.
Yes. So stay tuned. We'll talk next about some of the ways that you can help control little changes that you can make in your life that will help maybe lead you on the right path to gaining control back of your life. So stay tuned. Be sure to like and comment.
Yes.
And subscribe.
And if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share it. We would love it. Bye.
Bye.